responsible, you can get that done. As for information today, let's look at what students are doing in the 1960s. And kind of the thing, students are getting organized. Students are getting political. Students are starting to participate in the political process for the first time in American history. And just kind of think your way back through all of the history that I've taught you. Was there ever the opportunity for a mass amount of students to gather and get something done? And the answer is no. We're kind of unique to all of these, kids being in one place at one time on a college campus in the 1960s. So in Michigan, they write the Port Huron Statement. This is like University of Michigan, if you're one of those fans. But they write the Port Huron Statement calling for students to get political. They want students to participate in democracy, and they definitely will in the 1960s. So if you're looking at this SDS, that stands for Students for a Democratic Society. And again, that's their statement. They're saying, hey, let's participate in democracy. Let's have participatory democracy. And do they? Absolutely. Throughout the entire 1960s, college campuses will be filled with student protests, and then they kind of splinter off into a bunch of kind of sub-protests over, I don't know, whatever democratic idea they have on their campus. A lot of it's going to be headquartered on the West Coast at the University of California in Berkeley. And note something about the free speech movement. This will be led by a guy by the name of Mario Savio. And I'm going to give you just like a 60-second clip to his like really charismatic speech where he's calling for students to, get really involved. You got to listen to that guy say it. So he's calling for free speech. Don't students have free speech? Doesn't the Constitution provide free speech? Well, college campuses actually didn't allow it. College campuses would not allow students to, protest and, have all sorts of individualistic ideas. So in California, they organize in what becomes the first and largest mass student protest in all of American history. So this free speech movement, they want free speech. They want to, talk this, talk that. And if you think about the impact of this free speech movement, or if you guys have ever done a college visit, most college campuses now have like a free speech circle or like a union where people can talk whatever idea they want. That stems from this free speech movement. So it took several years. They end up getting it. Now it's basically in every college campus. By the end of the 1960s, however, all of these students start to splinter off into these weird groups, and some become like terrorists because they didn't really get what they want to. So the Weathermen, by like 1969 or 1970, they end up trying to like throw some bombs in Chicago. Kind of think of the kids that never graduate college. They enter in 1960, they're maybe idealistic, they're participating in democracy. All their friends graduate and they're still there. They never went to classes, but they're still there. Well, by 1969, they're still there and they still want to be political. So a small handful of these guys splinter off and become the crazy weathermen trying to drop some bombs to like start a revolution. So just kind of think of this starting out, a whole lot of students want to get involved. And by the tail end of this, it's going to splinter into a number of different movements. The Students for Democratic Society, blah, 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 blah. You can see mass protests throughout like entire city streets. They do sit-ins on college campuses where they refuse to go to class and they try to take over administrative buildings. Obviously, once the Vietnam War escalates, they're going to get highly involved in those protests, get the hell out of Vietnam, as you see there. But anyway, these are the Students for Democratic Society. The other group, not necessarily students, you probably have some knowledge at least about the counterculture or the hippies of the 1960s. These are not students. These guys don't participate in politics. In fact, the counterculture, they go like live in a farm in the middle of nowhere and practice this, communal society of everything sharing. These guys want to withdraw from reality. They don't want to participate in politics and protest. They go hop on a bus and do their own thing. So by the tail end of the decade, you'll see a little bit of carryover into mainstream society. But let's just briefly look at a few of the key counterparts of the counterculture. Communal living. Everyone shares. They all live on a farm. Everyone just shares. There's, kind of think of it, communism, communal living. It starts in San Francisco in the famed Haight-Ashbury region. So there's a picture, Haight-Ashbury. We're talking like 1964 would be the emergence of these, counterculture ideas. So just think, San Francisco is where it starts. By the end of the decade, it's everywhere. They're going to grow their hair out long, listen to Bob Dylan, perhaps do some drugs. There's other music that I will have you listen to and just kind of briefly analyze. But I think you're at least familiar with Bob Dylan. He's still alive today. Some of the Beatles are still alive today. In fact, some think the Beatles songs are just speaking to the counterculture. You guys ever heard of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds? Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. What in the world could that mean? Well, many in the counterculture were doing a lot of acid or LSD. So they hear Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and they think that is about drugs. A lot of it was about drugs, and you'll kind of see that with some of the songs. But just, simply note that these guys are living their own way. The whole movement peaks in 1969 at Woodstock, the hundreds of thousands of young kids at this music festival. I think one of my video clips shows some Woodstock. If not, it's out there everywhere. You could YouTube and see just about any concert from Woodstock. I may not have that clip because I don't want you to burn your eyes out by seeing something that you might see at Woodstock. But anyway, I've got these examples for you. You'll be able to listen to it, analyze it. But these guys, they're not student protesters. They're going to withdraw from reality and live it up their own way. There's Woodstock. There's Jimi Hendrix, 1969. Huge. I mean, look at that. We'll get into this guy later. He's going to be involved in a campaign, and I think I am done for the day. All right. This is noting the fracturing of the entire movement, by the way. So the fracturing of these students by the late 60s, early 70s, they're pulled all different directions. You might still have your student protesters, but now the people that may have been united are going to be fractured into, say, the Black Panthers or the American Indian movement. Some were the crazy weathermen. Some of them tried to form an American Communist Party. So just kind of think that this student protest movement, while in 1960 it is united, by 1970 they're all over the place. Make sense? Hope so. Let me know if you have questions. Enjoy the video clips today.